over the next 20 minutes is to basically show you a little bit what we call automotive research with a flavor of Silicon Valley. Is that on? Yes, let's get this started. So thanks for the introduction. I'm the executive director of the Center for Automotive Research here at Stanford, which is an industry affiliates program. So the task is to bring automotive industry and academia together. I actually spent 13 years in the automotive industry myself. You guessed it maybe from my accent. I'm from Germany, which is not a bad place for automotive engineering. But I decided to come here to Stanford University to really think about the future of the automobile. And I wanted to share a few of these things with you today, especially what it means, flavor of Silicon Valley. And let's dive right into it. It's not diving. Let's see.
Driving.
Yeah. Well, let's see. No, it should. Maybe just taking.
Do you want to use this instead?
I could if this doesn't work, but I think it's a Mac. It's not as fast as a PC. There we go.
It's okay, we have backup.
Yeah. Well, okay, a little bit about Silicon Valley. I'm sure that most of you are familiar with Silicon Valley on the landscape, and maybe also this kind of landscape, the companies that basically are known in the Silicon Valley, the Microsoft also here, but mainly Google, eBay, Apple, Symantec, Intel, and whatnot. But this is interesting to add this to the mix. So basically all these companies. So you might not have guessed that actually there are a lot of automotive companies here in Silicon Valley. And many of those logos you know, some others, small startup companies that then might grow into somewhat larger companies after their initial startup phase. So there's a lot of automotive topics already happening here in Silicon Valley. And so this picture should actually answer the question, why automotive in Silicon Valley? So it's not just about Detroit, it's not just about Europe, it's not just about Japan, Korea, and increasingly Japan. Actually, there are a lot of things happening here. And in fact, many of those automotive companies have been here in the Silicon Valley for about 15 years now. And they are actually trying to get a glimpse where the automobile and even more where the field of mobility is going in the future. And that's something that we do together with our industry partners. One picture maybe here, where do we come from? And this is actually research that is also now about 10, 12, 15 years in the making here at Stanford. So we have a very strong background in automotive control theory, drive-by-wire, steer-by-wire, brake-by-wire, efficient powertrains, and so on. Basically where you need a lot of processing powers for vehicles to make them safer, cleaner, and also more enjoyable, more fun to drive. There are a lot of things actually where you can apply Silicon Valley technology and a lot of the Stanford expertise to automobiles. And those of you who sign up for the tour to our automotive lab tomorrow afternoon will actually have the chance to meet Professor Chris Gerdes, who's also the faculty director of our automotive affiliates program here. I assume that quite a few of you have heard about autonomous driving. That's another very big portion of the research here on Stanford campus in the automotive field. This is the computer science group that rose to fame actually in the DARPA Grand Challenge in 2005 when it was actually demonstrated that cars can navigate a course of 132 miles without any driver interaction. And so the reasoning behind these things actually, with all the computer vision, with all the probabilistic planning as they call this, decision making, and then obviously executing a path in traffic, how can you actually make vehicles safer, more enjoyable, but also traffic as such more efficient, because whether we like to admit it or not, but we humans are not very efficient at controlling traffic, especially if there are too many vehicles on the road. So there's another way of helping with that. Another topic that's more of the origins where we come from here at Stanford is human-machine interface. Professor Cliff Nass in the CHIME lab, which is called the communication of humans and interactive media. It goes way beyond what you might know as human-machine interface. It's really how do you communicate with technology. And what they do here with increasingly automated vehicles, how does the vehicle actually communicate to you what it's about to do? Because if the vehicle slows down all of a sudden just by itself, you might wonder, what's going on here? Why are we stopping? What is the situation? And therefore, the vehicle is supposed to communicate with you, because otherwise it might be safer, but you might not feel safe in it because something is taking action. And then you might have a not so perfect interaction between the human and the machine. And maybe then technology that can help a lot might not be accepted from humans. So Professor Ness is very interested with driving simulator that's also at our automotive research lab, and also other things like whether we like it or not. Ever so often the driving just becomes a secondary task when people are behind the wheel. So they are also researching driver distraction and things like this. So this is sort of the origin that we have. We then actually created 2 different programs here on campus that really combine and cultivate the automotive research in general a little bit more. On the left, you see the CARS program that we initiated about 3 years ago, which is the industry partnership. And as you, do we need this microphone? Is this being recorded, or can you hear me? Okay. We can say we basically have not all of them, but many of the automotive manufacturers from Europe, from Asia, and now also increasingly from the United States. Took a little bit longer to get the Detroit companies acquired with our undertaking here. And what's also nice about this, we are not just looking at how to manufacture a car, how to design a car. So we are very proud to have other companies in there, such as State Farm Insurance, for instance, which tells you it's not just about engineering what we're about to do here. It's also about the whole use case and maybe actually business models and so on around the automobile. But also Paccar, which some of you might know as the mother company of Peterbilt and Kenworth trucks. So really the whole fleet management and so on, where again, a lot of computer technology is actually being needed in order to be more efficient with the whole scheduling of traffic and vehicles. Where this is basically singularly looking at the future of the automobile, we just initiated another program here earlier this year, which is looking more at the culture, the history, and the social impact of the automobile, noting that especially in the last century, obviously the automobile has changed so much in our society, many things for the better, some things also became very challenging, which is being looked at with the RAVS program, where we really say what is the intersection of engineering, humanities, business consideration, legal considerations, and so on, around the automobile, to really understand it's not just a shoebox on 4 wheels that we are looking at, that we are getting into, that gets us somewhere. It's so much more the whole connotation of lifestyle, of, again, social interaction and so on, that we established this year at Stanford as well. And that tells you actually a lot why a lot of industry companies, or in this case also private donors, come to Stanford to research these things. It's really because Stanford is a fairly interdisciplinary space. We are not just looking at engineering only, business only, legal only. We are really trying to synthesize all of this and then working on future directions in the respective fields. With this, it's not quite the summary of my talk, but maybe the summary of the different topics that we have here. Since you will, those of you who will go to our lab tomorrow will hear much more in detail individual research directions, I wanted to, again, summarize 4 main aspects that are out there at the moment and that are, in one way or another, being researched here at Stanford University. Driver assistance, we talked already about autonomous driving, and on the path towards fully autonomous driving, we see a lot of driver assist and lane departure warning, lane keeping assistance, adaptive cruise control. Some of you might have heard about this. You put a bunch of sensors on a car, a lot of processing powers, and then electromechanic actuators. And the idea is that the car can do everything by itself. A lot of challenges, obviously, there. The other thing that's certainly a given, alternative energy with the electrification of the transportation sector, but also asking questions, how much electrification do you actually want? Is a battery electric vehicle really your best option? Or is maybe a plug-in hybrid or maybe a highly efficient combustion engine by itself the best choice? And that, you might agree with me, depends on the use case to a large extent. Actually, how much do you drive on any given day? The other topic, this is where Silicon Valley meets actually automotive connected mobility, the internet in the car, vehicle-to-vehicle communication, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, again, to save lives, to save gasoline, and also to make the driving experience more pleasant, because being stuck in traffic is typically not a great experience. Number 4, real quick, mobile society. How do we use mobility? This is about car sharing programs, but also changing demographics. The aging society might have different needs regarding their mobility. The younger generation might have a different understanding of how much they identify with their personal vehicle than it was a few decades ago. So this is definitely changing. It needs to be reflected in the way how we design vehicles and also how we use vehicles. In this, and the rim around all of this is actually the very important part. Don't just look at the automobile and mobility in terms of technology and design. You definitely want to look at business consideration economics. You want to look at human factors, sociology and sociology. You certainly want to look at environment and resources. That's obviously a very pressing topic. And politics and policies. For instance, if you're looking at autonomous cars, the question really is, what happens if something goes wrong with these things? You might have a great technology, but we see over and over again, even the safest technology might fail. And therefore, you want to make sure before something gets on the roads that these things are well thought through. Also, what are the contingency plans that we need in the non-technology field? 3 things I wanted to bring to your attention. What are we doing this quarter? We're actually just starting a few independent studies where we are inviting students to think about the 3 following topics. One is on the far left, electric mobility. What is really missing there? Why is it not really taking off as much as everyone would have thought? And we want to look at the impact of electric vehicles, but also on electric vehicles. We want to look at technology. What about battery and charging technology? And we want to look at consumers. What is needed in order to motivate consumers to make the right choice? In the middle, we talked about autonomous driving already. We talked about the risk already. And now we want to look at the risk management, like fail-safe strategies for autonomous vehicles. If sensors fail, what do you need if the vehicle is in traffic and you need to take action somehow to get this car to a safe stop? And then some of you, or everyone has heard about car sharing, but now we want to look at peer-to-peer car sharing. There's some evolving things that can be a very interesting aspect if this is a short-term trend or long-term, a short-term hype or long-term trend. So we want to find out a little bit more how people are using their cars. There's another list of classes that I just composed of automotive relevant topics here on campus. We do have a lot of these user interfaces, Professor Cliff Nass that I mentioned on my second slide, I guess. Then we do have quite a few things in electric automobiles and design, combustion engine research. And down here we get more into the non-technology fields, like where's the automotive industry going, but also urban planning and sustainability in cities, which obviously has a large impact or interaction with the automobile. You can look this up. Our website is automotive.stanford.edu. If you go to classes and jobs, you have this list basically in much more detail. And finally, we hope to see you tomorrow at our automotive lab, where we will have all these exciting cars and where you can ask more questions. What's really happening hands-on automotive research at Stanford, automotive research with a flavor of Silicon Valley. Thanks a lot.